I know. Oh, there we go. All right. Thank you, Sarah, and your team at HOMA for preparing all of this and inviting us here today. Thank you to all of you for coming and joining us. At this point, I'd like to start our panel discussion by inviting our guest speakers. We have former mayor of the Big Island, Harry Kim. We have Hawaii Symphony Concert Master Iggy Jang. And then writer-director Jin Young Lee Won. Also, I'd like to recognize, although not guest speaking today, we have Christine Suahisa Jang, who she was not seen in Songs of Love, but she was very much heard with her piano accompaniment. So thank you so much, Christine. And then we have Dr. Edward Schultz, who is in the audience. He is. You saw him in Words of Wisdom, and Dr. Edward Schultz is the president of Korean American Foundation Hawaii, who was our very first sponsor of Songs of Love, and really believed in our project. So thank you so much for being here today. Okay, so I would like to start off with actually, no, I'm sorry. I wanted to also recognize Dr. Gary Pak, who was on the program but not here today due to a COVID-related illness. But you saw him in Words of Wisdom. So just to recognize that. But I wanted to start off with Harry, Mayor Kim. In Words of Wisdom, you said that one of your biggest regrets in life was not expressing sort of gratitude with your dad as he passed away when you were 15, 16 years old. I wanted to ask, if he was here today and he had seen you, as a elected mayor, seen you in public service for the majority of your life, what do you think he would say to you?
It is impossible to sit and watch this and hear this without all kind of emotions of past. On this past Friday, I was asked by Cal High School, surprisingly, truthfully, to be a speaker in their graduation. And one of the things, I'm not answering the question, but that's okay. I got the mic. One of the things that I spoke of, and I have a bad habit of not ever preparing, no matter where I'm going to speak. And it was a big audience, at least a couple of thousand, at the ball field. And I told them, if you look around in this audience of Keal, Puna, Hawaii, there are people of every religious group. There are people of every ethnic group. People of every social status. And look at you, friends, neighbors. And that's what I dream of and hope for in this world. And I repeated, surprisingly, the same thing that was on this film to the children that was graduated. That if you put your life on materialism, you let people judge you by materialism. Take away of who you are. Don't let that be the guiding light of your life. Be who you are and be proud of who you are. Another thing of memory is when they talked about my mom and that beautiful violin background in regards to the grave. I thought of my sister, and there was a photo of a graveyard in Hawaii. And to this day, we don't know where she was buried. Parents took her to that community grave, so to speak. And we would go there every year, and my mom would make an estimate about here, about there, and we'd cut the grass. Because life was so hard for them that they only could afford sticks put together. And when they came back the next year, naturally it was gone. What you saw on video is a lifestyle a lot of the beautiful people of Oahu, the lifestyle of the Koreans and other immigrants, so the Filipinos, Japanese, the Chinese, the Portuguese, on the plantation life was 1,000 times different. I did not see electricity in a home until I was 19 years old. I'm the youngest of the 8. And what my father and mother would feel today, I cannot imagine. But I know they would be extremely, extremely proud of their work and their values. I will end this lengthy answer of how proud I am of my brothers and sisters. My oldest brother, and God forbid, I don't know how they did it. He left home. He fought in the Korean War too. Was a medal winner because of the war. When he died not too long ago, people of his classmates was talking to his children, and I was standing next to him, said, "Do you know your brother won the highest engineering degree award in Purdue?" And I, whoa, I didn't know that because nobody said anything. Children didn't know that. How does a boy born where I was born, in the middle of a forest with a mama with no doctor, achieve that? We all work 7 days a week, including kids. I'll talk about now, jump to my youngest sister. I remember her saying, "Well, bye, Harry, I'll see you." And she graduated from high school that summer and left. I never saw or heard from her again for 14 years. Now I'm through with the Army and going to school in Oregon. I get a letter from her. "Hey, I'll pay for your bus fare down. Come meet your niece. Come meet your brother-in-law." Can you imagine that? She went to school on her own, but followed her dream. And you know who she is? Mrs. Barry's Cookies in Kona. Some of you might know that. She called me one day to say, "Hey, I'm going to quit teaching." And I said, "You what?" She said, "Yeah, I'm going to follow my dream. I'm going to open up a bakery." And she's a damn successful entrepreneur. I don't even know what her question was now. But I want to thank you.
You answered it.
I want to thank you for this. I want to thank you for the audience. And let me end with this for a dream. Governor Ige asked me to write something about Mauna Kea, what I felt about it. And I wrote a pamphlet. In it, what I thought about what Hawaii Island, Hawaii State, what the mountain could symbolize. A most beautiful place on God's earth of people. And that is be a symbol of that through programs and buildings, etc. Why he didn't follow up on it, I don't I'll forever hold it against him. And close with this. I was coming back from the mainland one day, and maybe somebody in this room can help me. As I going downstairs, I saw this big picture of Hawaii with the governor, I think it was Cayetano, of kids, 30, 40 kids. He's done, he said, maybe you can follow up. And I thought, what a beautiful symbol of this world could be. Because I saw every ethnic group together. This is what we have today, a cosmopolitan place. And the world, as most of you know, is in a bad shape today in the United States as well. Maybe we can make Auntie Pilahi Faki dream of 1970 when she was asked by Governor Burns, what do you foresee for Hawaii? And she talked about the cosmopolitan people, the people of the world, just like this room, just like the video. And someday, the world will turn to Hawaii, a place of aloha. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor Kim. Okay, Iggy. When I was sitting there, I think I cry every single time I watch Songs of Love. And we finished filming last year, and we were so impressed with your beautiful playing, your emotive body language, and Jin Young. We're working on season 3, and she wanted to collaborate again with you, and understanding how busy you are with the Hawaii Symphony, with teaching, with traveling. Why was it important for you to, to join again for episode 3?
Well, I think everyone in this room is always busy. I think it's about making the time for worthy causes. Jin Young and I go back a long time ago. I think back in 2005 or 6. She called me, and she was then a journalist, maybe Korea Times. And being a journalist, when you interview someone, me or Mary Kim or anyone, is very much a one-way dialogue. So it's very much centered about what you are and what you're doing and all your projects. But actually, a lot of journalists have a lot to share themselves. We don't know that because we just take them for granted and their questions. So over the course of a few years, then I got to learn more about Jin Young and about her thirst of knowledge, about tradition, about the respect for elderly. And so it was sort of a normal progression that from being a journalist for Korea Times, she moved on to various ventures. And I found that Jin Young, I think, is someone who brings people together. And I think it's a quality that's very rare these days. You can be a teacher, you can be a leader, but you don't always bring people together. And I think you mentioned my wife, and I think my wife brings people together, but she doesn't even know that she does that. But so that's how I found I respect Jin Young's work, and I got to meet the people she works with, and I developed a trust. And so the team that Jin Young assembled, Pavel, who's from Poland, the recording engineer, Pierre Gilles from France, and Lucas from Brazil, all those very sincere, committed people. And I enjoyed so much about, through Jin Young's work, to learn about Hawaii, to learn about the history, my history. I grew up in France, so maybe some of you can understand, but my parents, first generation immigrants to France in the early 1960s, they're not denying their heritage, but they just wanted to make sure that they would feel and be accepted in France, in the French society, that they almost suppress their roots because there are so few Koreans or so few non-French citizens around 1960. And so for me to come back here, I mean, to come to Hawaii for the first time, and I'm meeting Dakiyu Murabayashi, who you saw in the movie, it almost, to be in Hawaii made me realize what it feels to have a sense of home, to kind of go look back, to look ahead. And so we did with Chris this first episode of Songs of Love, and about the musical part of it, I think there's so many layers in people these days. You know, there's the protective layers, defensive layers, the PR, marketing, a lot of things. And so you try to peel everything. And so down to the bare bone, it's just what's on the sheet music, your instrument, and the people you share the stage with. And so we tried our best to kind of be earnest and to provide those emotions. And so I just wanted, after episode 1, for Jin Young to feature renowned artists from all over. So I'm sure there will be more. She can maybe tell you more about what's coming up. But for the third episode, when Jin Young asks you something, you don't say no. Because she has a vision, and she's going to convince you of her vision, no matter what. So it's just this opportunity to share the project with so many wonderful artists, who maybe Jin Young will tell you. But again, and then we have fantastic composer slash arranger with Michael Thomas Fumai. And again, the anticipation of just having this intimate moment of the music, the sheet music, and the instrument and the musicians, I think is very much something I couldn't say no to.
Thank you. Again, you shared it so beautifully. Thank you so much. Okay, Jin Young, I think people are probably curious. You finished Words of Wisdom in 2021. It was, very much successful and acclaimed. You wanted to continue this story of Korean immigration, but why did you decide to do it with music this time?
Yeah. Before I say anything, I really want to say thank you one more time to. Yeah, I meant it when I was making a speech that I think the filmmaking is completed, with the audience. Thank you very much for coming here on Sunday and to watch it and still being here with us. It's really, I'm really very grateful. And also, having Mayor Kim and Iggy for our project, Mr. Chang, I should say, I guess, and Mrs. Chang. I just felt how it's a nice background music, but right, it just makes me feel, I really am. We are really privileged to have these wonderful, wonderful people who share their talents with us. So I really like to, say thank you for that too. And finally, answering to your question, Michelle, I believe that music can speak louder than words, oftentimes, and really it connects with people like really in a deeper level, oftentimes than words, especially when it's played, performed by great musicians like Christine and Iggy, who play with all their hearts. And I wanted to reach wider audience basically. And before I end to it, I like to also recognize Yusun, who played in the film. There were two violinists who were playing in the Words of Wisdom. She's here with us. I just see her. I wanted to say thank you also, along with the people that I mentioned. And before I say anything more, I would like to listen to, what you have felt or your story or any questions for us. Maybe we could open up to the audience.
Sure. At this
Thank you.
time, we can open up to the audience. Any questions?
Can I just
Go
jump
ahead,
in? I
Judy.
just wanted
Sure.
to say that not to put a label on culture, but I'm going to anyway. Sometimes with Korean culture or maybe Japanese, in the family, you don't always say "I love you," or the emotions don't go deep, and it's not always warm and fuzzy. But I think what Jin Young has managed to do with her filmmaking, whether it's to film music or moving commentaries by Mary Kim or others, is just to go beneath the surface and really touch on people's emotions, more so than maybe when I grew up and we were at home and we were sort of not sharing too many emotions.
If anybody has any questions, you can just raise your hand. You can shout it out, and I can repeat it for either Mary Kim, Iggy, or Jin Young.
Jin Young, are you allowed to say who's going to be featured in other episodes?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for asking. While we are waiting for people who are brave to have some questions for us, so Songs of Love is a musical documentary series, as I told you, and then the one that you watched today is the first episode, and the second episode is going to be about a lady who came to Hawaii back in 1920 as a picture bride, and that is the grandmother of the Dr. Gary Park, who he was talking about his grandmother in the episode. And I just was so very touched. I thought there's something more about that. And I asked him if we could write a scenario for the second episode. And he beautifully did he did a beautiful job. And we were able to have the Grammy Award, winning beautiful violist whose name is Richard Yongjae O'Neill. And he played the Arirang and other songs maybe like 2 weeks ago, right, Michelle? In Hawaii. And so they will be coming out maybe toward the end of the year. And then the episode 3, we are flying out to Molokai in 2 weeks, actually. And it's going to be, we wanted to honor and dedicate this episode to those people who died in isolation in Kalaupapa, Molokai, including some Koreans. There were, many, many people who were there, as you might have, you probably know. And Mr. Michael Fumai, sitting right here, of the Hawaii Symphony Orchestra, he did a beautiful job of creating 2 songs, including Aloha Oe. And that's going to be our kind of finale of this musical series. And Iggy, in the beginning, he was reluctant, but, as he said, I called him every single day, and Iggy, we need you. And so Iggy finally accepted our invitation. And Chiyeon, who's another very renowned Korean violinist, is flying in 2 weeks. And then the Hawaii's legendary guitarist, Mr. Keola Beamer, will be playing with us to honor those people. Thanks for asking, Iggy.
Sure. And also, Hawaii is home to many musical treasures. We just mentioned Michael Fumai Thomas, but I teach at UH, and Don Womack, who I see in the audience. I work so many times in Korea, and so it's nice to, even though Hawaii is a small state, there is so much musical wealth here.
Really, yeah, we are fortunate about that for sure.
Is anyone brave enough to ask a question?
Thank you.
I'm just curious to know how many people in here have grandparents, great grandparents who worked in the plantation. Can you raise your hand? Thank you.
I think, as Jin Young mentioned in her introduction, that we all have stories of immigration, of immigrants in our family. So I think it's a nice way to kind of reflect and sort of be curious of your own background.
Thank you. And so I'm wondering if somebody like you has ever been tempted, since you knew nothing about your parents, have you ever been tempted to research into genealogy?
So she asked about your family's genealogy, because Koreans have some of the best genealogical records, in the world. So is that something that you've looked into or were curious about?
The answer is a no and a yes. Because I became mayor, you have contact with different people. And I've had more than one Korean ambassador try to trace my father, and a failure because he came from North Korea. All we know is maybe, there are survivors, but the story, the information they have is that my father's family were all executed in war. That's why I grew up never knowing one auntie, one uncle, one cousin, one grandparent, one nephew, those things. Because what we had within our family was it. And because I can understand now more than ever the sadness of their life, nobody talked about it.
Thank you for your question. I think I saw another. Yes.
Couple things. One regarding your comment. I know nothing about my grandfather who came here in 1903. He was from Pyongyang. And like the mayor said, everything was destroyed in the war where he was at school. And he talked nothing about any family that he left behind. He didn't want to look back. So my other question is, do you know of the original immigrants that came here around 1903? I understand that for the Koreans, there was less picture brides that came from Korea than there were like from Japan. So was it common or uncommon for Korean immigrants like my grandfather to marry outside of Korean? Because he did, he married a Portuguese woman who was an immigrant from Portugal. And I often wondered why he didn't send for a Korean picture bride.
So the question is surrounding picture brides for Koreans, and that it was less common maybe than Japanese, for example. Maybe that's a question for Jin Young.
To your question, thank you for asking. Within my limited knowledge, I know that the picture bride, they couldn't come after like certain year because Japanese when they came into Korea, when Japan was ruling Korea, they banned immigration, like to outside of Korea because they wanted to keep the labor within the country. So there were only 7,000 something picture bride. After that, there was nobody who could have come to Hawaii until later, much later. So I can, I guess that your grandfather probably didn't have that many choices because a lot of picture bride came with the potential husband they are married to, right? That's why all the mixed marriage and mixed ethnic groups started. The family started back then.
If I can answer that a little bit, I forgot what census it was that showed that the Koreans intermarried more than anybody else. Common sense prevails. There was very few Korean women. I'll brag about my one granddaughter I have because my dream is as a cosmopolitan place, and I'm looking at this man because he's closest to me. Maybe he can pick up the banner and make this the pride of the world, especially the hatred we have today. But my one granddaughter is Korean, Portuguese, Chinese, Filipino, Hawaiian, Scotch, Irish, and English.
Thank you for your question.
The genealogy tree. It reminds me of a story. So when I was a kid in elementary school, I think I was 8 or 9 years old, and our teacher said, "Oh, can you bring back a genealogy tree and put the name of your uncles and parents and grandparents?" And so I went home and I asked my parents, and like you were saying, I think they just didn't want to talk about it, and they just said, "Well, just write maternal grandmother, maternal grandfather, paternal grandfather, paternal grandmother," in French, of course. And this is what I did. And so I went to the class, and the teacher asked me, "Okay, Inyas, let's see your tree," and that's what I showed. And she was quite upset because she was very curious. But so I think people can understand this.
Go ahead.
Michelle.
So again, I'll triple repeat it. He asked if you had Iggy grew up with traditional folk music, um, Korean folk music growing up, or was that something that he developed later on in his life?
They were enamored with classical Western music when they were in Korea. My father likes to say that during just like Mary came, my father came from North Korea, but in the 1950s, he was in Seoul, and so he was working for the U.S. Military. And one of his songs of comfort was a Violin Piece by Sarasa, Ziegler and Weiser. So I think they were already assimilating classical Western music, and so they brought that with them to France. We wouldn't have those typical, artifacts or scrolls, Korean scrolls, and sparsely in our home. Um, so there were some Korean pride, but I think for their kids, they just wanted to make sure that there was a French assimilation. Excuse me.
Thank you, Mr. King. Mr. King is the band teacher at Puno School. I guess that's why he had questions about the music.
Go ahead. Okay. Does anyone, it could be anyone, honestly, know the history of Michan?
About what you said. I think actually there's an interesting history with that. You watched in the prologue episode where Korean women were making kimchi to raise money, and that's when they also made daegu-po. The daegu. Daegu is the Korean name, but they just write daegu because it became almost like a Hawaiian food. And also the dried radish, it's a mumalenge. That's also Korean food that started back in early 1900s. Michon, I have never read anything like that, but that I'm pretty sure it started because Hawaii has such a long history of Korean immigrant, then even longer than California. I'm sure Michon has started somewhere, I don't know, like closer to the 1945. And meat is meat, right? But 전 is like a frying in Korean. So in Korea, you say 고기 전. 고기 is meat. So they use the Korean word to describe like a kimchi, here. Very Hawaii, only, it can be seen in Hawaii. That has a long history of Korea. Thank you.
Now everybody's hungry. Okay. Go ahead.
Um, one of the messages from the film that stood out to me personally, and then I thought this kind of penetrated throughout the entire film, and the message was probably that due to the lack of socioeconomic support, which resulted from the fact that, these Korean, first Korean settlers have touches of different North Korea to find a new community here. And due to that, they were, they had lack of access to the mainstream side. So that was one of the country messages I found. And I myself am a 1.5 generation immigrant myself, so it kind of resonated with me on this a little bit. And then another hot topic among the AAPI community is intergenerational trauma that gets sent down through generations. And a lot of factors come into play, and I'm sure a lot of Korean immigrants have gone through that pain as well. And I think my question is particularly directed at Mary Kim. I wanted to ask you, how you found your self-worth throughout your life.
So the question was, how did you find your self worth, throughout your life?
I really want to thank you for that question because I don't want to let this opportunity that I can see are very, influential people in your way. Someone said in regards to a lifestyle of difference in the country of Puna, plantation laborers. There were only about 5 or 6 Koreans in all of Puna. The rest were a total mixture. And please don't take it negative. It's a realization that I made it a point to learn so I know what I feel and where I want to go. All of us, meaning all of the immigrants' family, and that was 90% plus of Ola's school at the time, in various ways is to suppress being Korean. Well, it is not to make you forget being Korean, but to make you a good American. I was born before World War II. Our community was at least 30% Japanese. I lost a lot of family friends through war. And that's the way it was for everyone. It is not until much later that you can understand things. And this is why the importance of peace on earth. Why did we lose the word cosmopolitan? It's an awakening of the specialness of this room of people. Prior to becoming a state in 1959, May days like in Hawaii, that I went to graduation, we talked about it. And I think that's what made Hawaii Hawaii. You know what May Day was like? It was a holiday for the school. Parents would get involved, kids would get involved. There was a king and queen court that was Hawaiian. And the rest of the court was the ethnic groups of Portuguese, Japanese, Filipino, etc. to the court. And they would be wearing their traditional clothes from their parents. And then entertainment with it also, and also food with that. Not realizing as a young boy, watching and absorbing all of this for all of your youth, the beauty of what was being taught, the admiration, respect, and acceptance of the differences. You do not know, because most of you are thinking how old I am. Well, I'm 83, so I was born before World War II. I remember the shock, literally the shock. We were sitting down like we do on weekends, picking coconuts and making coconut hats and those kind of things, when somebody said, "Hey, you guys heard about Jackie Robinson?" Because those days, no television, right? No, very few people had a radio. And this one guy said, "Yeah, he cannot play baseball because he's black." And everybody go, "What kind of place is that?" Because they had no communication. This is why I'm pleading with you. Let us not lose more of what this can be symbolic for the world. As I told that KL school grad, look at who you are and look at this community of love. I found out who I was Korean inside, all the way inside. I'm a full adult during I think it was the Olympics. Korea was playing. I'll bet you somebody in this audience will remember better than me. Because of the time zone when Korea played, it was 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the morning. And I read where the Koreans got together to root for Korea. And I found myself, I don't care who they played, I was rooting for them too. Did that make me a better American? No. I realized then it made me fully realize of soul who I am, of nationality who I am, equally proud of both.
Thank you, Malcolm. Does anybody else have a question? Oh.
Thank you for asking.
Who is your target audience? So in South Korea, what agency, what organization, government?
There's no like one specific like very small target. I just wanted to um, share this amazing story that I found about Hawaii with Koreans who know Hawaii just as a travel destination, honeymoon destination. I just was very moved by this Korean immigrant history of Hawaii that I never knew, even after several years living here, and especially the younger generation in Korea. I wanted them to know how much love they have received, and also then they can learn about their friends' history later on, and hopefully it will kind of make them to understand, the importance of being a cosmopolitan and living with aloha. Yeah,
Places like Incheon Museum or KBS.
yeah. Thank you. About it was especially the words of wisdom from the Rainbow State. That was, we were lucky enough to have some good response. It was filmed. It was shown in Incheon City Museum in Korea. It was broadcasted several times in Korea, and I think the fact that it shows kind of different side of Hawaii, and then the stories like Mayor Harry Kim shared and Chief Justice Moon, who passed away several months ago, what they have shared was just, I think, it's very universal. It's not just about Korean American history, and yeah, if you want to watch a little bit more, today's cut was like I said, 45-minute cut for today's screening, but the full episode you can view by searching Words of Wisdom from the Rainbow State on YouTube. It's available for free. The Songs of Love, we didn't open it yet since we are still submitting to different film festivals and all that. But Words of Wisdom is all available.
I want to jump in and not lose this opportunity again. When I wrote that pamphlet about Mauna Kea and what it could be, I asked the people of Hawaii, which I'm addressing now, because I could see and sense so much anger towards the Hawaiians driving around with the truck with the American flag, Hawaiian flag upside down, etc. And I said it publicly many times. I ask all of you to please understand them. From the day they were born and their parents were born in 1893 when Hawaii was taken over, everything was done possible to make them forget of being Hawaiian, even Kamehameha School. And this was the first time many of them could publicly say openly, I am Hawaiian and I'm proud to be Hawaiian. Try to understand that feeling, because every ethnic group at one time went through something like that to a different degree. It's not for or against a project. It was for the understanding of pain and growing up.
Does anybody have any other questions they'd like to ask? Okay. Oh, sure. Last question. This is a very good question. So the question is, how did we arrange for Iggy to play on that naval ship? And how did we get that double rainbow in the background? Did you summon God that day?
And it's not CGI.
It's not CGI. Yeah.
Yeah,
It was a lot of permitting. There was a lot of back and forth, and we got lucky, obviously with the rainbow. And
so when Michelle says permit, I think you were curious how we were able to do it there. So basically, we had to get two different permits. One from the Korean Navy for us to film there. Then the second one was from the Pearl Harbor, because it's a territory of Pearl Harbor, and because of Pearl Harbor being a military area, permit process wasn't easy. It had to go to federal and Korea too. But we were just trying to, especially being a just independent filmmaker, not with the KBS or like a biggest broadcasting company. But there are many people who really, took it seriously that what we were trying to do. Like Sarah, some people told us that there's no way you could do it unless you're a like big TV station. But there are people who really try to support us, knowing this vision and meaning.
But it was during a very important military operation called RIMPAC. Can you tell us?
The impact is that the every few years they get together the different countries to do this training, and I thought this will be a perfect representation of how Koreans and other immigrants have proceeded in the 120 years to show in comparison with the plantation era. But I didn't know if I could really do that or not. But the people like at the Korean consulate general know that they have done it.
And the plan was to film in the around sunset, for beautiful sunset. But we came in the afternoon, and the team saw a beautiful rainbow, and so we just hurried and took the opportunity.
During COVID, and we had to check for the.
Yeah, I know. No one wants to talk about COVID, but
Yeah. But anyway, because of the COVID and all that, there were a lot of regulations. But we were like, please, please. But then when we got on there, finally we saw these huge two rainbows, and we are like, oh, this is a sign that we're doing an okay job from the heaven, the Korean immigration unification. So then we didn't wait until sunset. We just thought, two rainbow, what can you ask for more? So we just hurried and we left.
and that was our last film site, so we got really lucky there. Okay, we just again wanted to thank everybody for coming today, celebrating AAPI and watching the films. If you didn't get a flyer when you walked in, I believe there's still some upstairs that have more information about both films and our production company and what we're doing next. So please take a flyer if you haven't already received one. Thank you, everybody.